And a very pleasant good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest, and that unfamiliar face is actually a familiar voice and a familiar mindset here on the program, as we've often quoted the professor. So it's a pleasure to introduce Ken Jacobson, aka the professor, probably the sharpest college football and basketball handicapper that we know. The season is over, so we have many other things to address, including you're one of the guys, Professor. Welcome to the show, by the way. Thanks so much for getting up and doing this.
You
We'll be
so?
on a little vacation, and he's cruising around the Dominican Republic. He claims he's going to have an exclusive interview with Sammy Sosa that we're going to unveil here on the program sometime in the near
Wouldn't
future.
surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine. Isn't that the guy that greets you at the airport?
That's what I think. Yes.
Very pale complected Sammy Sosa says, and you're like, yeah, really? You're Sammy? I can't believe it. Holy Michael Jackson. What are we talking
Does
about
kind of
here?
look like a casino greeter these days.
Doesn't he? I mean, he
Yeah.
could be Joe Lewis sitting there in front of the Tropicana at Atlantic City saying, I don't know why they don't want me to do this. Anyway, yesterday, tough day for a lot of people. We didn't make it onto the air yesterday. We decided to take a little day off here and just kind of regroup. And it was a good thing, too, because I got to my accountant's office about 5 o'clock yesterday, always shaving the deadline as close as I can. And the first thing he did was hand me a copy of the Fifth Amendment. And I'm like, I don't know. Am I really going to need this? And then next comes a list of non-extraditable countries. And when I come out with my tax
That
return
list is getting
formulated,
smaller and smaller these days. Remember,
yeah,
you could, like go to Costa Rica, you could go all over the Caribbean or even a couple of European nations. Now it's pretty much. So, how do you feel about Venezuela, sir?
yeah. You'll like it in Honduras. There are a lot of Italian restaurants, surprisingly so. Some of the boys from New York are still down there, and they started their own little community. And then I come out of the office, and this was a little bit frightening, maybe a bad omen for my return not being accepted at its bare essence. And there were two helicopters circling overhead when I came out of
Oh,
the office there.
just
It was
like
very much,
Goodfellas. The
yeah,
black
Ray
helicopter's
Liotta.
following me.
Karen, that was all we had. Anyway, so we got by that. Hopefully, you guys aren't stressed out today after filing your income taxes. And of course, in reality, I didn't file shit yesterday. I just put it off to October 15th and then hope that this is the one time that you actually root for a hurricane, not to necessarily have any great devastating impact on your immediate area or any other place for that matter, but just enough to encourage the IRS to say, well, we'll give you till February this time.
Well, this is actually I think the worst part of the fallout of the great housing recession
Yes.
is that somehow forever, like all our banking records were actually just paper records in a fucking file somewhere, and nobody knew it. We couldn't take advantage of the fact that I didn't know my mortgage was just some sheet of paper that got thrown out in a fucking dumpster in Boca during the anthrax scare. If I had known that, I would have stopped making my payments like 12 years ago. What the fuck, man?
It's pretty much
But,
what I did. Then I tried to claim that
now
I
it's
should have.
all electronic, so the storms can only help you so much with a delay.
Yeah. I tried to claim that, I should own the house because, some vile signature error that was made at a bank in
That's just my
Omaha.
point is who knew that in 2008 you could literally say, well, show me the piece of paper, and they would
Yeah.
have been like, bah.
That's what happened.
I mean, if we had known this, it would have been a very different world in the early 2000s,
Yeah.
right?
It took me, it took them 5 years to catch up with me. And then finally I had to say, okay, thank you very much. A lot of things happening in sports. I had to rip up my mock draft after the first pick yesterday, my WNBA mock draft. Can you believe it? They took this Caitlin Clark, number one.
Yeah, you didn't have Caitlin Clark going number one overall?
What were the odds on that? I mean, that had to be the most minuscule bet that you could ever make.
I would think that would be like minus 10,000.
Less,
Minus 10,000 with a circle. You could only put $200 on it and profit 2 cents or something.
Imagine that. Yeah. I mean, it would be like betting Scotty Scheffler to win the Masters there at 4-1, which seemed like an atrocious price. Nonetheless,
I'm so sick of talking about that. Never during my lifetime can I recall a group of people who deserved to lose a bet more than people who bet on Scotty Scheffler to win the Masters. And then you turn on Twitter yesterday and they're all bragging about, I picked Scotty Scheffler.
I told you.
And look, I get it. The winner is the winner. If you got a winner, you got a winner, blah, blah, blah. But you are such a chalk eating pig if you would take plus 450
on a golfer.
Honestly, but it's like betting the even money favorite at the Derby. Like, what the
Worse.
fuck is wrong with you? And you totally deserve to lose. Like when you get kicked in the teeth the next million times, you chalk eating pig, you're gonna deserve it.
Yeah, all of those guys should have been mowed down by Ludwig Aberg or some
Right,
nondescript
exactly.
European schmink that you never heard of before, even though he was ranked number 3 in the world. And where were the Live Tour players? Was there a Saudi Arabian embassy that they could go running to?
I think the one guy had it right that the 54 hole thing seems to kind of screw them up. They're not used to playing 72 hole. I mean, flashback to the Casey Martin days when we all laughed about Nicholas and Tiger and everybody getting up on the stands and say, hey, it's a lot of work to walk 72 holes over the course of the weekend. Maybe that wasn't such a freaking lie. I mean, it kind of seems like the 54th hole thing has them kind of messed up.
Well, they only play like 8 tournaments a year. I guess it's 14. Exaggerating to make a point. It's usual.
Like, Morikawa went like 27 holes between Saturday and Sunday without a birdie. I mean, again, it seemed like the Live Tour guys all went backwards on the last day and a half or so.
It was good to see. It really was. And where was Greg Norman again? We went another Masters without a Norman side.
I totally enjoyed that. Like, you see Greg Norman having to buy his own pimento cheese sandwich, like a schnook.
I think if you're examining in Zapruder film type fashion, the Khashoggi entrance, which we've seen a million times into that Saudi Arabian embassy, there in the background, just tracking in behind him is one Greg Norman.
I mean, probably
he's done a disappearing act
with swords that he would have missed like 15 times. There would have been scars all over the walls. Greg Norman tried to whack him with a 2-iron. Yeah,
unbelievable. Yeah. So, and a lot of money went up in smoke. I believe this is an artificial intelligence conspiracy that's being operated by Putin and the Russians themselves to try and bankrupt America by convincing people. And they did it again. It was very much like when Muhammad Ali fought Larry Holmes years and years ago. And right before the fight, when everybody knew that it was going to be an atrocity, they have a picture of Ali, who had been bloated and out of shape for his previous 10 fights. At the very tail end of an unfortunate continuance of his brilliant career. The fight doctor's in the corner screaming, don't go in there. Don't go in there, Muhammad. Absolutely appalled by this. But the day before the fight, they put a picture of Ali in newspapers across the country, and he had been taking some thyroid medication. I guess this was a precursor for Ozempic. And somehow it had him just ripped and looking like he was ready to go. And all the money came in on Ali. He actually went off a 6-5 favorite, I believe, over Larry Holmes that day. And the entire fight was spent. I think Richard Steele was the referee. He may not have been, but the whole fight, all you had was Holmes going one hand in Ali's face and going, "Are you going to stop it or what?" And that was it. But a lot of people got duped into thinking that he had a chance.
You are a fight guy, and you may even work one of these. The two moments everybody always talks about where boxing went too far: Holmes and Ali.
Yeah.
And Holmes and Randall Tex Watson, where he just
Tex Cobb
beat him into Tex Cobb, where they just beat him into the Crimson Mask on network television. And from what I've read, that was pretty much the end of boxing on network television. The networks decided after that one that they really didn't necessarily want to do that anymore, which was actually the uglier fight.
Well, the Cobb fight had Howard Cosell was doing the call on the fight, and the entire time he was saying, "This is a disgrace." The referee may be in the Hall of Fame, Carlos Padilla. I'm not sure, but the fact that he let that go on was incredible. Tex Cobb, though, a rare, comedic presence, and he was talking after the fight about how he should have gotten credit for his defense because he blocked all those punches with his face. That was it. But yeah, it might have been. It might have been one of those times where the execs up there finally said, "Yeah, you know what? Maybe we ought to get out of this game."
Right.
And you didn't see too much of that after that. But the Tiger Woods thing, he did look like a shot fighter by the time they got to the middle of the second round. He was okay. He had one round under par, which is pretty remarkable. I had bet and wagered, and I didn't get sucked in on this wave of money that was coming in on Tiger Woods. How could you possibly believe that he was going to win the tournament? Not even remotely conceivable. And we've seen the pattern. I thought he was going to be carried off on a stretcher somewhere in the middle of the second round, but he made it through that.
What makes golf the weirdest sport, right?
Yeah.
Every other sport, everybody loves the underdog. You get in the World Cup and Uruguay makes it to the semifinals, then the entire world is cheering for Uruguay. You get into the NCAA tournament and, some school, I don't know, Oral Roberts School of Dentistry is playing North Carolina, and you walk into a bar. If the game is close in the second half, everybody's the biggest Slippery Rock fan you've ever met in your life. Football, if a team's a touchdown underdog, if it's, Coastal Carolina playing Nebraska and it's close, everybody's a Chanticleer fan all of a sudden. But golf, people love to cheer for the chalk. People love to cheer for the favorites. You can have the 400th ranked player in the world going head to head with Tiger in the final 6 holes, and everybody's cheering for Tiger. It's the most bizarre fan base.
He is kind of the underdog, though,
on the planet. Well,
you would have to say.
Tiger, from a
crippled Tiger. I mean, all he's been through.
Again, Scheffler. Everybody's going crazy for Scheffler.
I love him. Yeah.
I honestly think the worse human being you are, or the bigger chalk pig you are, the more golf fans love you. I mean, again, when DeChambeau's shooting 7 under on the first day, everybody's a Bryson DeChambeau fan, despite the fact that he does everything he can prove that he's awful at every possible opportunity. I mean, golf just seems to like the chalky douchebags.
Yeah. Well, Tiger, I mean, he needed Dr. Galea to be caddying for him in this one. He needed some kind of juice. Shoots the 82 on the third day, and how much money went up in smoke? Can you imagine? Professor, where people actually had him. They were betting him to be in the top 5, top 10, win the tournament outright. And anybody that even had the semblance of sanity had to realize that this was all a hoax and just a wicked, wicked hoax being perpetrated by the golf world, that Tiger Woods still has a shot. I think Jack Nicklaus probably had as much of a shot to win that thing after watching his opening drive there in the ceremonial first pitch type of thing that they do at the Masters. Anyway, yeah, Scheffler, if you were riding Scheffler, people were bragging about it. You're right, Professor. It's like the guys at the track and the 3 to 5 shot comes in. He's like, I told you this 3 couldn't lose. And you're like, shut the fuck up. Yeah. Get away from me here. Take care of this guy. I'll pay his check. Just get him the fuck out of here. I don't want to be anywhere near him. But the Caitlin Clark thing, we touched on that for a second. No surprise, obviously. Is she the best chucker from Indiana since Rick Mount was playing for Purdue? What do you think?
Are we counting Reggie Miller as from Indiana?
Maybe. Obviously.
Oh, wait, Bird.
Long career with the Pacers. Bird. Larry Bird?
Yeah, he's from Indiana.
But was he a chucker? I mean, he was more of a scientist out there as compared to just a blatant outright chucker.
I keep getting told Caitlin Clark is not a chucker. That's what, all the Caitlin
people are offended by that.
Yes. They're horribly offended.
What, chucker? What are you talking about, chucker? She passes.
Caitlin Clark. Yes, she led the nations in assists. Well, so did Trae Young when he was at Oklahoma. So
you made that comparison, and you were slaughtered on social media, were you not?
Very offended about that. Yes.
Yeah. Why is that so offensive? I mean, Trae Young is a chucker. There's no doubt. He does other things. He actually has had a better NBA. What's that?
He's about to get a max contract, and he's an all-star. Like that. That's not like a hateful comparison.
Exactly. The chucker was the person that had no conscience whatsoever when it came to and never passed the basketball. Could be under immense duress.
Well, she
challenged by 3 different people.
She also clearly has no conscience. Like she will pull up from anywhere, and I think it's in a lot of ways. I think if you're looking at someone and they this is like the big thing, right? Like she wasn't respectful enough to the WNBA legends. She didn't, pray enough at the Temple of Diana Taurasi or Cheryl Miller.
50-year-old Sue Bird.
Yeah, Cheryl Swoops and all the. I think in a lot of ways, the person who set the groundwork for the immense popularity of Caitlin Clark wasn't a woman. It was Steph Curry. Like, I think the way Caitlin Clark plays obviously carries a lot of notes of Steph Curry. And Steph Curry is the one who made this style of basketball what the kids want to watch. Like, you see little kids these days, they're much more into the 3-pointer than they are in the dunk. They're much more into jacking one from the logo than trying the alley-oop pass from half court, which is a kind of a reversal in the way I think generationally we absorb basketball. So I think in a lot of ways, if Caitlin Clark is going to be cited as the next evolution, her popularity is largely due to Steph Curry.
Are the Indiana Fever the WNBA version of the Detroit Pistons? It seems like they have their first pick every year.
They're the bad boys.
Somehow.
Oh no, I don't know anything.
I'm talking about the modern day Pistons, where
I don't
after
know
7
anything
years
about
of drafting
the
number one,
WNBA.
they still suck.
Honestly, all my knowledge of the WNBA is gleaned off what I can get off of Twitter.
Yeah,
and
we all became experts though.
Draft, because apparently, both the LSU girl Angel Reese and the South Carolina girl that's like 6'8" went to Chicago, and there's some talk that neither one of them will actually start for Chicago, and Chicago's not particularly good. So interesting in the way that apparently the WNBA works, because there's only 12 teams and there's a very deep talent pool involved. Apparently in the WNBA, high lottery picks don't even necessarily start as rookies.
All right. Well, we'll see how her career pans out. I'm assuming that I think she'll do just fine as a professional basketball player.
I think the two interesting storylines moving forward. Number one,
when they put the 4-point shot in, a Caitlin Clark rule, they're going to put a 4-point shot in the WNBA.
Number one, how many eyes can she bring to the WNBA? Can she be the one that makes the WNBA a profitable enterprise?
Are they thinking that way, though? They're only going to televise 36 of the 40 games that the Indiana Fever, a last-place team, is going to play this year.
I mean, I think they are thinking that way. Just
imagine that.
The number of eyes she brought to women's. Sure. I mean, 20 million viewers the last game, and over 15 the last 3 games of her career. So, number one.
Just slightly more than we have for this segment every day.
Yeah. Can she bring audience to the WNBA? And number two, what happens to women's college basketball ratings without her next year?
0.0, Mr. Plutarski.
I'm fascinated to see. I think it's Alexi Lawless brought up the point. He's like, look, we've seen this before in sports where like a transcendent guy comes through, be it boxing or even something like pro wrestling or football or all these other sports. A particularly transcendent athlete comes through, and the audience doesn't maintain in terms of the full scope. But generally in other sports, it's been like 20 or 30% of the audience for the next 2 or 3 years. If women's basketball can maintain 20 or 30% of that 20 million, we'd be talking 4 to 6 million people. If you give 4 to 6 million new eyes on women's college basketball, that would be a gigantic win for them, even though it's only a minuscule amount of the eyes that were actually on Caitlin Clark.
I got this prop bet going, though. I actually sent it in yesterday with my tax return. And that was how many years over under? It was 4.5. How many years before Caitlin Clark becomes a star in the WWE and flames out her WNBA career? And it's only a matter of time before she's screaming, McMahon!
Honestly, she's pretty skinny. I don't know that Angel Reese, maybe. She's got a little bulk to her. But no. Clark's pretty skinny. I don't know if I necessarily, and she doesn't really jump that high. So
you didn't watch this draft by any chance, did you, Professor? I mean, you haven't stooped to that level yet, where you're watching WNBA drafts, knowing how the order is going to go. I mean, that's about the easiest draft to nail. Mel Kiper wishes he had started out handicapping the WNBA draft as opposed to the NFL.
My post baseball all-star game Wednesday. I totally took the night off from sports for the first time in a long time.
Wow.
I kept since at least probably last summer.
Poor Kiper, man. I mean, imagine usually by pick number 2, his entire board is blown up.
Poor Kiper, my ass.
It would be like in the 59th pick, I tell you, this guy's the best guy available. Are you kidding me? How can they overlook him?
Poor Kiper, my ass. The guy's worked like 2 days a year for the last 25 years, and I don't know exactly what he makes from ESPN, but I got to figure it's like high 6, low 7 figures because he's been there forever. I mean, look, sometime around the middle of the college football season, he makes up a list, and then he talks about that list a little bit, like, once every couple months and then 1 day a year he has to work. I guess it's actually like 3 days a year because they stretch it out now.
You don't think he's doing immense research all year long, looking into the most minute details about these various prospects?
But honestly, Mel Kiper is sort of he's the Max M. Finger of
yes.
professional football. As you know, and then recruiting has now gotten so much more advanced, but you remember the days where Max Emfinger would come on your call-in shows.
Sure. He was
People would
great.
just call up and make up names, and he'd be, oh yeah, he's a nice tight end.
Little Johnny Jones. Yeah.
High school, 6'4".
Wherever he was,
pounds.
too, he would tell you that your school was about
Yes.
to have the #1 class in the country, and every prospect that was mentioned.
I feel there's a lot
I
of
believe we may have even thrown John Blutarski at Emfinger one day on a setup call that I had come into the show. And he actually commented and said that in spite of some academic difficulties, there was a possibility that he could turn into much more than the NFL scouts perceive him to be right now. And we lost a voice here. I mean, he's still alive, but maybe barely. I'm not sure exactly what the status of John Sterling is. The Yankees announcer abruptly retiring. Now, he had given indication he had taken some time off for health issues. The guy's fucking 86 years old, so had a great career. I mean, not everybody can go out like Vin Scully at like 99 and still be telling you to pull up a chair and stay a while. And you're thinking, yeah, I might do that, Vin. Thanks so much for inviting me.
You get one of those gigs, you hang on to it, right? Like you don't.
Oh,
really
sure,
see,
why not?
Yeah, you don't see dudes checking out of that at like 67 or 70.
No, I mean, you're in the press box right behind home plate at Yankee fucking Stadium every night of your life. They're bringing you hot dogs, and then you don't even have to worry about watching the game, which I think Sterling was having great difficulty with, as most people have been alluding to for what? It's not recently that you started to hear things like, it is high, it is far, it is...
That's going to be caught by the second baseman, John. It's nowhere near the fence. It's nowhere near the fucking fence. How many times a game are you going to do this? Will you let me call the game?
That, of course, being the great Susan Wallman, yeah. Which...
What is in George's box?
Can she possibly work with anybody else? Because I mean, Sterling was just perfect for her to interject things
that gig. You're taking it, right? I don't care who you are.
Yeah, they had a couple of people working it already that in preparation, I guess, because Sterling started to cut back on the number of games he did. But what did you think of all that? John Sterling, actually, I have to give him some homage here, because when sports talk was not at all in vogue, but when it was kind of unheard of on AM radio, and this is going back when I was living in New York, so this is prior to like 1974, and Sterling was doing a sports talk show on one of the AM stations, one of the big AM stations in New York during the afternoon for a couple of hours. And I have to say, I mean, being a highly critical sports fan and always analyzing announcers, did a hell of a job. So at one time, he may have been, pretty coherent and capable.
What does and does not work in this business is such a weird thing. I mean, it really is, and it's totally unpredictable. A classic, a friend of yours and a favorite of mine growing up. Who the hell would have thought Hank Goldberg would work? A fat guy sitting in a nightclub, ordering drinks and screaming, as close as you could get to curse words without actually cursing at his audience and telling them how much he hates them in their city and all their teams. And
it was Minnie Francesa here in Miami when this guy was on the air. And then, of course, he became nationally prominent when he was burying people with his, and we loved the guy too. But
hammering the gamblers on NFL Prime or NFL Game Day.
Yeah, he was great. He would bury you with an 0-5 on ESPN, and then go on his local radio show and go,
yeah, I might have lost on ESPN, but I beat the shit out of my bookmaker. I went 4-0 personally.
I always found that a lot, that you would want to bury your adoring public and then turn around and spit in their face by saying, I won anyway on my own.
It was Hank, because his whole shtick was how much he was great and you suck. Again, and then to replace it nowadays with something like McAfee, who we were talking about yesterday, who I think is allergic to shirt sleeves.
Does AJ Hawk ever say anything? What's the story on that?
Again, it just sits there and looks like a hammerhead shark with his eyes far apart.
That's the best job on TV, isn't it?
In front of him. That may be why he never says anything. He's confused because he can only see to the sides of him.
Even the guy that's off to the side that does like the announcing, bringing like the host onto a show, gets more words in during a program than the AJ Hawk does during that McAfee show. Why is he up there?
You get McAfee himself, who he's like the Guy Fieri of sports talk. 44-year-old former player who's such a douche, but everybody
Yeah.
loves his douchiness. Like, and I had totally forgotten, he played at West Virginia, and it fits because he's like every West Virginia guy ever with the tank tops and the always.
You think they're
like
cringing
Cincinnati lights?
at ESPN? Or I mean, maybe it's working. I don't know.
It must be working. They just fired Norby Walters, who had issues.
Oh, that was the guy who went against him? Yeah.
Or no, excuse me, Norby Williamson, who had issues with everybody. And again, on the other side, you got Levitard, who does like this woke sports thing, and people completely dig it. And he's not facetiously talking about Caitlin Clark in the WNBA for a straight hour and a half, but people dig it. And it's all stuff that's like, how does any of this work? Because 5 years ago, all of this would have been pure poison on the radio. So
no doubt, yeah.
Who knows? We were as Wild West as we've ever been, but the business has always kind of been, though. I mean, Pharrell, it sounded like he was going to.
I understood Pharrell. That was always a test. If you understood this guy completely, then there what was chromosome missing in your own body chemistry. Can you imagine Mel Allen though?
By Chris Everett or by Jim Everett on TV, and then comes back bigger than ever,
bigger than ever. Yeah,
right.
Made an ass of himself. Yeah, that's maybe the way to do it. Or be an outrageous right-wing extremist, and you're going to get all the attention.
Travis,
who would know anything about what district Matt Getz is from?
Clay Travis went from dude who talked about Tennessee Volunteers football 24 hours a day in strip clubs to taking over Rush Limbaugh's job. Like,
there you go.
This is such a
conspiracy, my friend.
Business, man.
Can you see Mel Allen though ever breaking into like a Sammy Davis Jr. song in the middle of a home run call?
Honestly, if he were around, Mel Allen would be singing those kind of songs.
Mel Allen couldn't get a job today if he was around.
He'd be changing the lyrics to be about DraftKings. Like, really? Change the lyrics to be about the prop bet that Boban blew the other night to get free Chick-fil-A.
As much as many media critics lambasted and lampooned and harpooned John Sterling in his calls, which seemed to be laced with senility, unfortunately, the people loved him. He's getting amazing tributes all over the country, and especially from Yankee fans. It seems like everywhere, and they absolutely love the guy. As corny as some of that shit was, Garney goes Yardy, and you're like, what?
Well, again, a lot of these over the years, guys who have become like super famous and the biggest in their sport. Look, I'm a college football guy. I worship at the altar of Keith Jackson, but looking at it 20 years removed, Keith Jackson was kind of corny. Like, just the fact that Oklahoma, and somehow
he had a great presence though.
He said it, everybody loved it.
He made you feel like you went to the fucking school. I mean, that was, he really brought you into the game.
Our man, Gus Johnson just goes and loses his shit every small insignificant. It's a run up the middle.
That I don't get.
Yeah. I'm just saying, a lot of these, particularly in the play-by-play game, a lot of these guys are corny and people dig it.
A lot of shtick. Yeah, a lot of shtick.
I was sitting there listening to the Masters and thinking, you know what? The Masters could actually use like a corny.
Needs a spark. It really does.
It's better than Nance.
Nance is finished. He's hearing footsteps from our good friend Ian Eagle in every sport. Ian Eagle, I think he even began the NCAA Final Four by saying, hello, friends. And that was that. All right, we got to run, Professor. A lot of fun being with you. Much to talk about here on the show. I don't know. Do you want to give it a shot tomorrow, or what do you think?
Sure. I don't know when Luby's back tomorrow. Either us or the Loopster. And I know this is no filter, so we're supposed to do some picks. Let me just say, I like both home teams.
Okay. In the playing games today?
The Pelicans laying 1.5 to a very beat-up Lakers squad. And then the Kings getting either 2.5 to 3, depending on where you're looking at it, from the Warriors. I'll take both home teams in the West tonight.
I think more heads will be rolling at ESPN if the Lakers and the Warriors get eliminated from this thing. The one loss for the Warriors, and they're out, right? And when the Lakers are number 9 seed,
I don't see anything left in the Warriors. I know people are kind of hoping for a run. But
no, the Lakers had to be 8, right?
Lakers are 8.
Okay, on the road against the Pelicans, who don't get a lot of playing time. Sometimes you'll get some Zion highlights, and but in general, largely ignored this year by the pundits to handicap the NBA. So we'll see if they can come up with a win. Professor, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow for the Professor Ken Jacobson. In for Mike Luby Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. We'll see you next time on the next edition of the Morning Briefing.